So that's a version of one of the voices, which we betray ourselves each time we open our mouths and try to perform what we've written for you to read in the privacy of your own minds, and you do it much better, I think, than we do out loud. And the other voice is, dear Henry Brandling. When Eric has given her this project to work on, a mixed sort of, odd sort of, very kind, sensitive, totally insensitive thing to do, and yeah. Catherine anyway likes clocks, but she's totally creeped out by automata, and then some of that attitude actually I got from talking to a conservator at the Victoria and Albert in London, who explained how awful it was. She was more concerned with the fabric, but I think it was a smoking monkey or something that she was working on, and she said the fabric, just with age, the silk and the velvet gets sort of an awful sort of quality to it. The whole thing is, of course, like all automata, it's sort of a little creepy because it's simulating life, and it's not. And she could only finish it by putting a paper bag over its head. So one is advised by people one talks to, and I thought I'd give some of that feeling about to Catherine. And so when she sees all these boxes, and she sort of fears what might be in these boxes, which have been packed hurriedly at the time of the Blitz in what was it, 41, 42, I can't remember. But looking through this, she finds these notebooks, and they're Henry Brandling's. It's like school exercise books. And that's Henry Brandling's 150-year-old account of how he came to have the object in there commissioned. And he thinks, we learn that he's actually commissioning a duck and an automata, and we see the plan for it, but in fact he's going to get something else which he didn't want, but so the notebooks are the one thing she's interested in, and she's sort of touched by him in a sense that he's sort of distraught and half mad, and she feels sympathy for him straight away. So an awful lot of Catherine's feelings, which are very tumultuous, and she's often raging, occasionally drunk, things that are sometimes, here and there I find readers who are very upset by her behaviour, and I always think, well, if she was a guy, no one would be particularly upset. So anyway, she's angry and she's grieving, and sometimes her grief does give her permission to act in certain ways which would not be acceptable in normal life. So we learn about Henry, and Henry says that what Henry says is that he's going to is setting off to have this automaton made for his son, who we understand has consumption, and we understand that he's had and he's wealthy, from an early railroad family, the Brandlings, and. So we learn that the couple have lost a daughter already to consumption, and we learn now that the son is showing consumptive symptoms, and we figure out that the wife cannot bear to love her little boy because she's going to lose him, and Henry Henry's an appalling optimist. And is so everything in Henry is there to look after the child, and there's various cures that he's helping to undertake, and his wife just can't bear it. And in the end, it's clear that she's really kicked him out of the house. And when the little boy likes the drawing of the automaton of the duck, she comes back to him and says, "So you've promised him this duck?" And he said, "No, I didn't. I just showed it to him." And she says, "No, obviously you're not going to get his hopes up and then not give it to him." And he said, "Oh, really?" And I'd have to go to Europe or Germany or something. And she said, "Well, you would know what best to do." So effectively, dear Henry has been kicked out of home, and but all of his emotions are basically sort of focused on the notion of his child and the fact that this thing he's going to have made will save and cure his child. Sort of magical thinking of a certain kind. Well, there you are. That's enough for a bit. How about a question? Yes?
Why a duck and why the middle of the 19th century? The duck is from the 18th century, isn't it?
Well, it's reproduced in the Illustrated London News in the 19th century, which is where Henry becomes aware of it, and it's those plans that he has. Yes, but indeed, Vaucanson's duck, yes, is the 18th century, but it has to be the 19th century because that's what I wanted.
Why is it what you want?
And Why a Duck is I think a book by Groucho Marx, or is it a film? I can't remember. Well, what I was interested in was, well, this will sound rather discursive. Never mind, it is my nature. Where I began with this book was by thinking about the internal combustion engine, and thinking how, and generally that all the bright invention of the 19th century and the 18th century had sort of led us to where we are today, with the internal combustion engine may well kill us all, and what a short period of that time is, and what an extraordinary period of invention it was. And invention is never innocent, I know, but comparatively, it seems, comparatively innocent. And I had a sort of a B-grade science fiction idea, which was just thinking to myself, if there were hostile space aliens out there and they decided they wished to destroy the planet, all they would really have needed to have done was to get the plans for the internal combustion engine and deliver them, and come back 200 years later and their work's done. So, and there is indeed within this sort of notion, there is a sort of a character who's a little unstable, who sort of basically does believe that the swan is in fact a sort of a Trojan horse for the internal combustion engine. And she's not, she's Catherine's assistant, and she's at once really brilliant and really, really clever, and a little unstable. So, which she has to be to carry my idea in a convincing sort of a way. So the thing that begins the beginning point of the book is something that then is carried by an unstable character later in the book. So what I needed then, I need the period of, the first invention of it, which has all sorts of things which don't really matter to you, but mattered to me at the time, about the beginning of the internal combustion engine and Carl Benz and all sorts of. Don't worry about it. And then I needed someone to be putting it together in the present time, in 2010. And as I was writing it, along came BP to sort of assist in the process. And I'm sure so many of you lived through that sort of terrible. I couldn't stop looking at the webcam, so I have a character, Amanda, the assistant, who can't stop looking at the webcam either, and seeing the oil coming out into the water and a change in colour when the dispersant comes in. And I at the time had this sort of terrible feeling like because remember, no one could stop it, and it was like we'd caused this sort of awful injury to the earth, and there it was, and there was that great black part in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's all this blue water and this black oil. So, all these things start to go into it. So in the end, the day that Matthew dies is indeed the first day of the oil spill. But that came along. Something else would have come along with what I was writing. Well, that's sort of an answer. Yes.